friends, I am Arpit and I'm here with today's analysis. Today is 14th of April and we are going to discuss three very important topics which are in news. India's first general elections. Now, since the election fever is here, we should know about how the first general elections were conducted. These were conducted in 1951-52. There was simultaneous elections at that time for the parliament and the state legislative assemblies. The first chief election commissioner, Mr. Sukumar Sen, faced multiple challenges because this was a daunting task, and this daunting task had to be accomplished by all the Indian officers right now. Elections were successfully conducted, and very few countries had that universal adult suffrage at that time, and India was one of those proud countries to have them. Since then, it has become a legacy, and elections are conducted every 5 years in a free and fair manner, ideally. Next is Mount Etna. Mount Etna is an active volcano. It is there in Italy, the Sicily Islands. It is in news because, it has become active and concentric rings of water vapor are getting emitted from this. Those are exact circular rings, concentric in nature, and they are getting erupted from it. And this is not the first time it is getting erupted from that. Actually, Mount Etna is not the first volcano to, erupt such kind of concentric rings. They actually happen because, the groove which has been formed inside the volcano is exactly circular in nature, and from that, these concentric rings are getting emitted. Next is the Muria tribe. Muria tribe, which happened to be the original inhabitants of Chhattisgarh, but now have they have transcended to states like Telangana or Madhya Pradesh, Odisha. They enjoy the ST status in Chhattisgarh only, and elsewhere they do not. The sad part is that they are devoid of basic facilities for survival, like access to clean drinking water, education, healthcare, sanitation, and such like. So that needs to be delivered to them according to the promises made by the central government of reaching the last mile in the last budget. So let us look into the details of these topics. India's first general elections. India, the world's largest democracy, then also it was, had to conduct these general elections. 1950 and 1951, the Representation of People's Act was passed. There were two laws, and these two laws had to govern the procedure of elections. And Jawaharlal Nehru, decided and announced that time that by the end of 1951, we are going to conduct elections. So elections 1951 October it started, and somewhere around February they were concluded. The results were announced somewhere around May, and we were a newly independent nation undertaking this exercise for the very first time on the basis of adult suffrage. Actually, there were elections before 1951-52, like in 1937 there were elections, but we were not sovereign at that time, first of all, and the electorate was limited. Those people who had studied up to a certain level, they were part of the electorate, or those people who had certain amount of incomes, they were part of the electorate, and there were certain criteria for the electorate back then in 1937. But now, anyone who was above 21 years of age, remember, 21 years of age was the minimum age back then in 1951-52 to be counted as an adult. And if you are of, sound mind, then you will be part of the electorate. Back then, these elections were simultaneous elections, means for the Lok Sabha and Assembly. Simultaneously, they were conducted. Votes were cast for 489 Lok Sabha and 3283 Assembly seats. How many electors were there? 176 million electors, means 17.6 crore people. How many electors are there now in this particular general election? There are 97 crore electors, or voters we can say. The voting age was brought down to 18 in 1989 only. Before that it was 21. At this time also it was 21. And 82% were unlettered, means 82% were first time voters. Now, political parties which were contesting this particular contest, the first ever general elections in the country: the Indian National Congress, led by Jawaharlal Nehru, obviously; Socialist Party with Jayaprakash Narayan as one of its leaders; Kisan Mazdoor Praja Party of J.B. Kriplani; Communist Party of India. It is also one of the oldest parties. It got formed in the year 1925. Akhil Bharatiya Jana Sangh, This Bharatiya Janasangh is known to be the predecessor of BJP. Then Hindu Mahasabha was also contesting the election. Then this is Karpatri Maharaj's Akhil Bharatiya Ram Rajya Parishad and Tridip Chaudhary's Revolutionary Socialist Party. So these many political parties were contesting these elections. We will also look into the results as we move ahead. But yes, the main body which was responsible for conducting free and fair election according to Article 324 of the Constitution was Election Commission of India. And Election Commission of India faced unique challenges at that time. So first of all, who was the first Chief Election Commissioner? His name was Mr. Sukumar Sen. He was an Indian Civil Services officer, and he was also the Chief Secretary of West Bengal at that time. And then he was appointed as Chief Election Commissioner. Now, this Election Commission of India was set up on January 25, 1950. Sukumar Sen, an officer of the Indian Civil Service and former Chief Secretary of West Bengal, became Chief Election Commissioner of the country, and the first one to be so. For no officer of state, certainly no Indian official ever had such a stupendous task placed in front of him. Conducting elections in the world's largest democracy, and you have no experience. You are going to do it for the very first time. And the officers or anyone who is there, in the electoral machinery to conduct these elections, for the very first time they're going to be there. Not only was the electorate spread over more than 1 million square miles, there was a peculiar social problem as well. What was that social problem? See, we are living in a patriarchal society. Women generally do not reveal their names easily, and at that time, though, this was quite, I would say, in vogue, that women were not revealing their names. They used to, keep that pallu in front of their eyes. They covered their skin, and all these kind of, I would say, social, practices were there. So many women in northern India wished to register themselves as A's mother or B's wife and not by their own names. Now this basically infuriated Mr. Sukumar Sen and said, no, this is not going to be acceptable. They have to tell their names. Then only they will be registered as voters. Ultimately, 17.32 crore voters from across the country, except Kashmir, were enrolled, and 45% of them were women having their names on the voter ID card. Now, which was the first state to go into polls? Basically, it was Himachal Pradesh of today. At that time, it was, I think, part of Punjab, the hilly regions of Punjab it was. Now, there are two places, Chini and Pangi Assembly. They were the first ones to go into polls in India because, these polls were conducted in these two places or in these two constituencies in October. Because, by December, there would be snowfall and it would be impossible to conduct polls over here. That is why they went into polls earlier. Okay. Generally, largely, this elections happened between December 1951 and February 1952. However, in Chini and Pangi of Himachal Pradesh, they were cast in October 1951. On December 10, 1951, voting began in the rest of the country with Thiruvalla and Trichur Lok Sabha constituencies of Travancore, Cochin, the present-day Kerala, first to cast their votes. How many candidates participated? 1874 candidates in Lok Sabha and 15,361 candidates in the state assembly elections. Since they were simultaneous elections though, it was the scenario. So what was the result of the elections? It was quite predictable. The Indian National Congress, would be dominating, and it won 318 seats out of 489 in the center. Socialist Party won 12, KMPP won 9, CPI won 8, HMS Hindu Mahasabha won 4, BJS, RRP and RSP won 3 seats each. Independents won 37 seats. So this is what the scenario was. Nothing to memorize over here in this, but just giving you a glimpse. Now, wins and shocking defeats. See, Jawaharlal Nehru, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, they expectedly won. They had to win. But Morarji Desai lost in Bombay. He was a popular leader of Indian National Congress at that time. He lost in Bombay. Jai Narayan Vyas in Rajasthan lost. The biggest upset, and this was shocking for me also, the biggest upset, however, was the defeat of B.R. Ambedkar, the architect of our constitution, who lost to former personal assistant Narayan Sadoba Kajrolkar by around 15,000 votes at the Bombay North Central seat. And this was actually shocking, that B.R. Ambedkar losing an election, at the first election. Now, this is it. Another fact which is very much important for us to understand and know is the first Lok Sabha also had multiple member constituencies. Means in one constituency, generally now what we have, one member is there. But earlier in that time, it was multiple member constituency, and this practice continued till 1962. Now under this, what was their multiple member constituency? Some constituencies returned two members, means they sent two members, one from the general category, another from the SC or ST categories. And in one constituency, all three categories returned one member each, means general, SC, ST. Seats were reserved for SC, ST also. So it was like this, that from one constituency, two members are getting elected. One is a general member, one is an SC member or ST member. In one of the constituencies all across the country, there are three members representing a single constituency. So this is a fact which we need to know, and this multiple member constituencies concept ended in 1962. Now we have one constituency, one member. Now elections as a success. Now it was, Jawaharlal Nehru at times became doubtful that whether elections will be successful or not. And, this was one of the biggest experiments in human history. And the Chief Election Commissioner, Mr. Sukumar Sen, himself described it as this. And, Jawaharlal Nehru after these elections said that my respect for the so-called illiterate voter has gone up. That illiterate voter went to vote. Whatever doubts I might have had about adult suffrage in India have been removed completely, and he said that we can move ahead with universal adult franchising. Very few countries at that time were following this universal adult franchising. Now, Election Commission's report on first general elections, that is 1951-52, quoted Mr. Sen as saying, adult suffrage was a remarkable success and proved a potent factor in itself for advancing the political education of an illiterate mass which had little or no background of political experience. But still they came out in huge numbers to vote. And this has become a tradition since then. India has been conducting elections time and again. And, many times the freeness and the fairness of these elections are a big question. Like, for example, EVMs are questioned a lot. So, we need to understand this thing that, if it is there, then that should be, proven. There's no point speaking about it and not being able to prove it. And it is, it is long since we're using EVMs. The losers always claim that EVMs are hacked, but, the judiciary is sitting over here. You have all the, I would say, scientific advancements happening all across the world, including our country. If it is, then you should be proving it wrong. If it is not, then you should be accepting your defeat graciously. So it is like this. The elections again are scheduled 2024, and in the world's largest democracy, around 97 crores voters will be voting. Now, next piece of news is Mount Etna. Now, since last week, Mount Etna, basically this is the largest volcano in Europe, has been releasing concentric rings. These rings are like this, if you're able to see it on the screen. And these are perfect circular rings, perfect rings of smoke into the air. These rings are a rare phenomenon that scientists refer to as volcanic vortex rings. Now, we'll come to about this phenomenon, what are volcanic vortex rings. But yes, some facts about Mount Etna first. Mount Etna, sometimes referred to as Etna, is an active volcano on the east coast of Sicily, the largest island in the Mediterranean Sea, lying just off the toe of Italian boot, means it is in Italy. It is in the southern part of Italy. Etna's peak is the highest in Italy, south of Alps, and it is Europe's largest and one of the most active volcanoes. Etna's summit has 5 craters, which are responsible for most of the volcanic eruptions. Means from these craters, the lava comes out and flows. Etna is in almost constant activity. It is constantly active and has seen since the year 1600 at least 60 flank eruptions and many more summit eruptions. Summit eruptions happen from the top and flank eruptions can happen from here. It is like this. Etna has been a World Heritage Site since 2013, and according to UNESCO, volcanoes' eruptive history can be traced back to 5 lakh years, if I am right. but at least 2700 years of this activity has been documented also. But according to UNESCO, it has been active since the past 5 lakh years. Now, what are vortex rings? They are generated when gas, predominantly this gas is, water vapor, is released from within the volcano through a vent in the crater. Now, let's suppose this is a volcano. Okay. Now, inside the volcano, there is this kind of vent, and this is circular in nature. Now, water vapor, if it has to come out, it will be coming out, it will be exerting pressure, and when it comes out in this format, because this is the vent in the crater is like this. The vent has opened up in Etna's crater, is almost perfectly circular. This vent is almost perfectly circular, the red ring which you are seeing. So the rings that have been seen above the mountain since April 2 are also circular. So these rings are also circular. Now, is this phenomenon new for Etna? Actually, no. A scientific paper published in the year 2023, February 2023, it was published. This paper said that this phenomenon was first observed at Etna and Vesuvius in Italy in 1724. And this has been documented also. An engraved plate from 1755 reveals these kind of details. Then again, the question is that has this phenomenon occurred anywhere else also, or it is only limited to Mount Etna? Now, in more recent times, volcanic vortex rings have been observed at volcanoes such as Redoubt in Alaska, Tunguruha in Ecuador, Pacaya in Guatemala, then Eyjafjalla Jökull, very difficult to pronounce, and Hekla in Iceland, Stromboli in Italy, Aso in Sakurajima in Japan, Yasur in Vanuatu, Wakari in New Zealand, and Montembeau in Nicaragua. So multiple places such kind of phenomenons of concentric rings coming out has been experienced. So this is not only exclusive to Mount Etna. Now the last piece of news, that is Muria tribes. Muria tribes, why they are in news? Because there is a cover on them in the newspaper that they lack basic necessities for survival, like education, safe drinking water, and other social benefits. They are at high risk of displacement as well. So they have this unique attire which you can see over here. Okay. Now, certain facts about this tribal group which are important from prelims point of view. They are a subgroup of Gond people, and Gond is basically India's largest tribal group, which is found in central India. They are an indigenous Adivasi community who live in the Bastar district of Chhattisgarh. They're, I would say, in hometown, or I would say they're endemic to that, but they are majorly found in that Chhattisgarh region. But they're also spread through Madhya Pradesh, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and Odisha nowadays. Muria are known for being economically homogeneous and for working together. Means they are less dependent upon others economically. They have mixed sex dormitories. Means males are also there in these dormitories and females are also there when they are in their youth. And these dormitories are called as Ghotul, where adolescents practice premarital sex before marriage and an omnivorous diet they are having. Liquor plays an important role in social gatherings. So they are very rangeen kind of people. And they hold ST status in Chhattisgarh, but not in the states they have migrated to. So this ST status depends on state to state. So these are some facts about this tribal group which should be known to you. And the topics are completed. Now we are here with the MCQs. The first is, who among the following was India's first chief election commissioner? I've repeated it multiple times and I expect the correct answer from these options. Very simple question it is, I know that. Consider the following statements and mark the correct one. First is, the first elections in India in 1951-52 were combined for the parliament and all state legislative assemblies. Second is, the first Lok Sabha had multiple member constituencies. And third is, Kerala was the first state to go into polls in India in the 1951-52 elections. Which of these are correct? Basically, you have to answer that. Then consider the following statements and mark how many of them are correct. So, how many of them are correct? This is basically new kind of questions that UPSC has been asking since the past 2 years. Mount Etna is Italy's highest peak. Mount Etna is the only volcanic peak in Italy. It is known for its unique feature of producing concentric volcanic rings like no other volcano in the world, and Mount Etna is a World Heritage Site demarcated in 2015. Only one statement out of these four statements are correct. Only two statements are correct. Not talking about which, but how many you have to answer. Only three statements are correct or all four statements are correct. Then consider the following states: Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand and Orissa. In which of the above states can we find the Muria tribes? Very simple question it is, and I hope to get correct answers for all the questions, at least in this video. Now, what does the term Ghotul refer to? It is a barter system practiced by the Muria tribe. It is an intoxicating drink consumed by the tribals of Chhattisgarh. It is a system of marriage where matrilocality is practiced. Matrilocality means, the groom goes to the, wife's house. The husband goes to the wife's house and resides over there. And the last option is none of the above, out of which, you have to answer the correct ones. And I'm expecting all correct answers in this video because these questions are simple relatively. And with this, we come to an end of today's session. I will be meeting you tomorrow now with more such informative news pieces. Till then, you guys very well know what to do. Keep studying, keep reading, keep writing, and most importantly, keep revising. Namaste. Jai Hind.